Hello and welcome to our webinar on Early Language and Literacy, Focus on the Performance Measure. We are pleased today to have three excellent presenters and some time to share together through ImpACT's webinar series. I want to make sure that you know we want to hear you today, so we have all phone lines muted, but we need to hear you in the chat. So we have over to the left side, you'll see a chat that everybody can use. If you stay on mute until we will have a video a little bit later, but if you'll stay on mute on your computer speakers, then you'll be able to hear the presentation through the phone. If anyone is having any difficulty at any point, they can look into the technical support box and go into the technical support box and ask questions, and our support team will come in and help you. We will be recording this webinar, so this will be available both on the McVie awardee portal, and it will also be available on HRSA's website after it has gone through the subtitles and some additional formatting. So our handouts for today, you'll see down in the file share pod, we have our webinar slides, which is the very bottom selection in the file share. All the slides we share today will be available in a PDF for you. And then there will be some other things shared from presenters that are in the file share pod. So at any point, you can download those right to your computer, and you'll have that information right in front of you. The handouts will also travel with the webinar if you'd like to wait until everything gets uploaded to the McVie awardee portal or to the HRSA site. You can also get the handouts there as well. Over to the side, you'll see that our project director, Lorraine Swanson, has welcomed us all. So she says, welcome. Well, please use this area for questions and comments throughout the webinar. So please feel free over to the left side to use that area to ask any kind of questions or have any kind of comments, resource sharing with your fellow participants. With that, we're going to get started. So our objectives for today's webinar, first will be to explore strategies like those used in the Reach Out and Read and the Video Interaction Project that McVie states and territories can use to influence literacy and school readiness. We'll then move into learning about Illinois' plans for early language and literacy and their local implementing agencies' Continuous Quality Improvement, or CQI, plans. Finally, we'll apply partnership ideas garnered from South Dakota's local work with their United Way. So getting right into the presentation, I want to take a moment to introduce you to our presenters on today's webinar. Our first presenter, we have Dr. Alan Mendelssohn. He's an Associate Professor of Pediatrics and Population Health at the New York University School of Medicine. Dr. Mendelssohn will be discussing the evidence base around a variety of early literacy interventions, including both Reach Out and Read and the Video Interaction Project, as well as the holistic array of outcomes that shared talking, reading, singing, and play can influence, including and beyond school readiness. Stacy McKeever is the Continuous Quality Improvement Specialist with the Center of Prevention, Research, and Development at the School of Social Work at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. She manages the CQI, or Continuous Quality Improvement Program, for Illinois' McVie program, providing technical assistance to grant recipients across the state. Stacy will be presenting on their CQI plans today. And Carrie Churchill is the program manager for South Dakota's home visiting program. She started one of the program's original nurse home visitors, in 2000 when the state became an early adopter of the nurse-family partnership model. She was also a local site coordinator before becoming the state lead in late 2014. Carrie will be sharing how one local team had an opportunity to partner with the United Way's grade level reading initiative and to pair that project with the new early literacy benchmark. So I just want to say a thank you to our presenters and all other ImpACT staff that are helping support us today. We're going to get started, as we always do, with two questions, our Jumpstart the Brain questions. So I'm going to ask if Kate will pull up a poll, and if you could please select, based on these three responses, parent-child interactions and the home environment explain what % of the disparities between poor and non-poor children in early development and school readiness. So if everyone will just take a moment and choose a response, we'll allow the poll to be up for about another 15 seconds. All right, I'd like to thank everyone for participating. We will revisit this question at the end after you've heard from our presenters, and you'll have an opportunity to weigh in on this question one more time. We'll go to our second Jumpstart the Brain question. The second Jumpstart the Brain question, which of these parent-related factors were identified as barriers to improving the performance indicator? The percent enrolled in home visiting with a family member who reports that during a typical week, she or he read, told stories, and/or sang songs with their child daily, every day. And you need to check all that apply here. So we'll give you about 15 more seconds to answer. All right, I'd like to thank everyone for participating in our Jumpstart the Brain. As I said, we will revisit those two questions again at the end of the presentation. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our first presenter, Dr. Alan Mendelssohn.
Hi, it's really a pleasure and an honor to be presenting to you today. The title of my talk is Preventing Disparities in School Readiness Through Promotion of Parenting in Pediatric Primary Care, Linkages with Home Visiting. The overarching goal of, I think, the work of a lot of the people on this call is to reduce poverty-related disparities in early child development, school readiness, and educational achievements. These disparities are a really big deal, and this slide is a terrific example of how big a deal it is. If you look at the percentage of children with reading difficulties in 4th grade and compare those who are poor, which is to say below approximately twice the poverty line, to those who are non-poor, among children in poor families, 44% of them have reading difficulties in 4th grade, compared to about 17% of non-poor families. As a physician, I can tell you we talk about screening tests a lot, and what this says is that poverty by itself places children at extremely high risk. This slide shows some data from one of the key studies that's often cited to kind of explain, to kind of show how these disparities emerge. And what's really remarkable is that the disparities appear very early in life. A research team named Hart and Risley in the 1990s published this data, and they went into the homes of families monthly, beginning at about age 6 months and following the families until age 3 years. And some of the families were high income, some of the families were working class, and some of the families were poor. And what this slide is showing is literally the number of different words that children could speak at, across the 1 to 3 year period. What's really remarkable is that from the time children can say their first words, which is at about a year, and I don't know if you can see my pointer, I think you probably can't, that you can see differences from the time children can say their first words based on their socioeconomic status. So a key question, and I guess one that you were asked as part of the first poll questions, is how does poverty impact early development and school readiness? And and what has been found, and this data that I just showed was sort of the data that kind of helps to support this idea, is that the home environment and parent-child interactions more broadly represent critical mediating factors, and at least in this study explain about 25 to 50% of these disparities. I think different studies probably would give different numbers, but 25 to 50% is a huge proportion that we can do something about. Now, so what can we do about it? Well, one of the key indicators in parent-child interaction, one of the key indicators of talk, read, sing, is literally the number of words that children are exposed to during those first couple of years. And so the same researchers, Hart and Risley, not only counted the number of words that children said, but counted the number of words that they heard. And what they found after doing a lot of listening to videos and a lot of extrapolation was that high-income families, children in high-income families heard 40 million cumulative words, not different words, but just total words by age 3, compared to 10 million in children growing up in poor families. This difference, 40 million to 10 million, is referred to as the 30 million word gap. And you might have heard about this. There's a significant HRSA initiative to address the 30 million word gap, in addition to what you guys are doing through home visiting. And this is a number to look at and to think about, what can we do. So how do you support daily talk, read, sing? And, what does home visiting do to, support talk, read, sing? Well, two key elements, two key areas for promotion are in shared book reading and adult-supported play, because both of those represent opportunities for this critical measure. Have we been able to make impacts on this measure and on positive interactions? And the answer is that the largest evidence base for impacting positive interactions comes from home visiting. And if we could switch over to the slide with the models. Okay, and here what you can see is something called from the formal evaluation that is taking place in a periodic way by HRSA, which is called Home Visiting Evidence of Effectiveness. And what Home Visiting Evidence of Effectiveness, or HOME-V, has been able to demonstrate is that, in fact, home visiting is associated with changes across the board in many different domains. And and what you're seeing here critically is among positive parenting practices, if you can see my pointer. So, and this is true across a large number of such programs. Okay, if we could go back to the slides, please. Thank you. Okay, I should mention that what I just showed you is available to you in the file share pod, along with a number of other articles. Okay, all right. So you have access to those. So now I'm going to shift gears slightly and talk about pediatric primary care. Now I am a general and a developmental pediatrician, as well as a professor, and I come from a slightly different perspective, which is how can we use pediatric primary care to help address these issues. And in fact, what the research I'm about to show you is going to show that pediatric primary care can be used as a platform to engage parents and to link with home visiting and potentially to boost home visiting and to be sort of an adjunct to home visiting, and provides opportunities to think about strategies that can be used in home visiting. So why pediatric primary care, first of all? Well, from my own personal perspective, I saw a lot of families as a general pediatrician with children who were falling behind, and a key question is always, well, what can I do to prevent? And it turns out that pediatric primary care is a good place to think about prevention. Why is that? 3 reasons. One is that population level accessibility is the first thing on the slide. So what's the idea behind that? Well, the idea behind that is that every parent in the end has to bring their child to their doctor a lot. We develop like new vaccines every year. If we had our way, we'd have you come to the pediatrician every day if we could. But in fact, families come to the pediatrician at least 13 to 15 times from birth to 5 years, and that does not include the large number of visits that take place for sick visits. Second, there's an opportunity to engage with families in a very significant way. When you get past the ear infection, when you get past the asthma, when you get past those medical concerns, what do parents think about most? They think most about their child's development and behavior, and we can build on their goals. Third is that one can do things at pretty low cost. We may not be able to be as intensive as what happens in home visiting, but we can do things at low cost that can be synergistic with home visiting, and therefore there's potential for early population scalable interventions. I'm going to talk about 2 of them very briefly. The first and most studied is Reach Out and Read. I hope that many of you are familiar with it, but it is a program that takes place at every well-child visit, now from birth to 5 years, in which the pediatric well-child visit is turned into this literacy-rich event in which, while families wait to be seen, volunteers model reading activities, and then the primary care provider, the healthcare provider, when they see the family, counsel parents about reading and distribute free children's books, about 9 to 10 books, maybe even more over 5 years. What's kind of remarkable about this is that this is a minimal program. I mean, there are no two ways about it. And yet what the experience with Reach Out and Read has proven is that pediatric primary care can be utilized in the way that I was suggesting, but that this strategy is an effective strategy and one that I think is thought about and needs to be continued to be thought about in home visiting. To date, there are 15 studies that have shown that provision of children's books and giving some counseling for Reach Out and Read lead to changes in parent-child reading aloud and child vocabulary. Second, the program actually now reaches 25% of all low-income children in the U.S. Through age 5 years. That's 5 million children, which is a remarkable statistic. And the third is that it does all this at extraordinarily low cost. It's around $25 per child per year. And from the perspective of policy, in a certain way, that's a rounding error. We decided to engage in, various effective policies, including home visiting. The add-on of Reach Out and Read actually turns out to be a very minimal cost. So I just wanted to share that with you. Building on our experience with Reach Out and Read, we in this case at NYU, developed something called Video Interaction Project, which tries to extend the Reach Out and Read model by adding an interventionist or coach who works one-on-one with families, promoting talk, read, sing through both play and reading aloud. And the core component of Reach Out and Read is the core components of Reach Out and Read is the making of the video recording, in which a video is made for 3 to 5 minutes by a parent-child specialist. Sorry, I was just distracted making sure everybody can hear. I'm seeing some comments that people can't, but I'm hoping everybody can. We make a video recording of the parent and child engaging around a book or toy for about 3 to 5 minutes. We watch it together with the parent. We identify and reinforce strengths and positive interactions and identify additional opportunities for interaction. We give the family a DVD or video to take home. I'm going to show you an example of that right now. We're going to switch to a video, but before we do, please be aware that you need to mute your phone and you need to turn on your computer speaker to hear this.
When she makes sounds, imitate those sounds, and then expand on it. I love it. She's clearly communicating with you. She loves your voice. This is a book. It gives you a lot to talk about. It gives you lots of colors. You can talk about the sound. There are different textures, so you see how things change.
What's that, little bear? A fishy. What color's the fishy? It's pink, right? Your favorite color besides purple?
You're constantly talking to her throughout the whole sharing of the book. It's pink. I love this part. You related it back to something that's very much to her.
It's purple.
What would you like to continue doing with her at home with the book? What would you do?
The same thing, play with her, show her the different colors. Oh, and also I could also make up stories,
Absolutely. See you soon.
Say bye.
Bye.
Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm hoping that that's the case. What I want to show you is that Video Interaction Project has actually been studied in 2 randomized controlled trials funded by Department of Health and Human Services through NIH and NICHD. And here, what these randomized controlled trials have shown that that VIPs associated with changes in and enhancements in parent-child interactions, including enhanced talk, read, sing, in this case reading, play, talking, and teaching. Some reductions in screen time. We're actually sort of crowding out screen time slightly by increasing interactions, which is kind of interesting. Enhancing parents' coping around child development. This is a big deal. We know that one of the hardest jobs and tasks that is imaginable as being a parent. It is extraordinarily stressful. And what VIP seems to have done through enhancing positive parent-child relationships is to reduce parenting stress, reduce maternal depressive symptoms and around parenting, and even reduce some physical punishment. And then finally, we've been able to show some enhancements in early child development, which have included enhancements in language and cognitive development, and most importantly, enhancements in social emotional development, where there are big reductions in hyperactivity and aggression, and enhancements in attention that are long-lasting and critically important for school. So, where do we go with this? And why present this at this session? And what I'd like to now address is how we can use this. So, one question is how can we use primary care to now link with home visiting and boost home visiting impacts, and be able to deliver sort of complementary elements of intervention that will lead to increased impacts for all families and children. There are three examples that I'll mention in passing. One is something called Smart Beginnings, where we link Reach Out and Read and VIP to one of the home visiting programs, Family Checkup, for families at highest risk. And we're actually in the process of preparing to use this with opiate-exposed newborns as well. City's First Readers, a New York City program, I'll tell you more about that. And then linkages that we've begun to do at NYU, we're beginning to plan to do at NYU, linking Reach Out and Read and VIP to the Healthy Steps program, and often and in addition to home visiting. Okay, so just briefly, Smart Beginnings. Smart Beginnings is an integrated tiered model linking Reach Out and Read and VIP to home visits for families at increased risk. It's a pretty interesting idea. The idea is that we engage in primary prevention for everybody universally. What does primary prevention mean? It means preventing problems before they occur, and we do this with everybody through Reach Out and Read and VIP. And then for those who need more services and for whom we find that the primary prevention isn't enough, or that we find that there are emerging problems for the parent or the child or the relationship, which is what we think is most critical, we deliver Family Checkup in the home at 6 and 18 months. And we're actually doing this right now as an NICHD-funded study in New York City and Pittsburgh, and we will soon be able to look at some of the outcomes. Next, I will talk about City's First Readers. City's First Readers is another really interesting initiative, an exemplar of initiatives, I think, like this around the United States. This one happens to be one that I've been involved with in New York City, in which primary prevention at the population level is used to link healthcare to the community. So what is it exactly? The idea here is that we try to reach families every place that they go. That means primary care. It means the community, especially through the libraries and the community organization called Literacy Inc., through early child education, and importantly, through home visiting, and in this case, it's through parent-child home. The goal of the program is to reach families every place we can see them, to provide complementary, synergistic messages, to increase impacts beyond that of what any one program could do. And we are doing this as part of the Bridging the Word Gap practice-based research collaborative from HRSA. Okay, and then I think this is my last substantive slide, and so what I just described was the concept of linking pediatric primary care and home visiting to boost impacts across both. The other take-home message from this is the opportunity to think about ways in which some of the strategies that have been used in pediatric primary care can be used in home visiting as well. And here, let's talk about a few different kinds of last comments. Actually, I have one more slide after this. One is the note that pediatric primary care can complement home visiting. We can establish linkages between primary care and home visiting to boost impacts at low cost. We can apply findings to develop innovations in home visiting. And so what do I mean by that? What I mean is that I think one of the key findings is that providing books and toys to promote interactions critical for school readiness is a really good thing to do. Why? Because the hard, I mentioned one of the hardest tasks imaginable is being a parent. Well, one thing that is really hard about being a parent is understanding how to talk to your infant, right? You can think of some things to say, but one runs out of conversation pretty quickly. And those books and toys give parents the words, the ideas to provide rich language that's going to facilitate children's development across domains, including language and their capacity to regulate their behavior. Second, I think, is a take-home message from these programs, is the concept of collaborating with parents to set and meet their own goals versus thinking about a set curriculum. So one of the great things about home visiting is the concept that one can deliver a set curriculum, something that we can't do in pediatric primary care. I think that in addition to doing that, the idea of now saying, okay, now what we're really going to do is try to understand what is it that you want and how are we going to help you to get there is something that is really engaging to parents and really empowering and really impactful. And then finally, I'll mention the idea of promoting self-reflection. And so we're doing this through video recording in the home, watching the videos to help parents to think about themselves, their own role, how important they are, and the role that they can play, and thereby empower them to engage in the activities that they want to do so that they can help achieve their goals for their children. And doing so helps parents to feel more confident, develop more self-efficacy, and develop the skills and expertise that's going to enable them to engage in those interactions even beyond the time where we are working together directly with them, whether in pediatric primary care or through the home visitor. And I will note that all of these approaches are approaches that are used to some extent by home visiting at the present time. Like, for example, a number of programs are presently using video recording and self-reflection, video recording and watching to promote self-reflection and skills development. Two examples are plan learning strategies and family checkup. So I think that the opportunity to really boost impacts by thinking about ways to provide complementary messages and complementary strategies is a tremendous opportunity for home visiting programs as well as for pediatric primary care. And I just am going to note that a lot of our work was funded by NIH and NICHD. And I will stop. I will note that I don't know whether we're going to do questions now. I think we will hold questions until the end. I do want to note, however, that I want you to look in just be aware of what's in that file share. In addition to the entire home V executive summary, which I think is really tells a lot. I think another thing that I'd like to call your attention to is the American Academy of Pediatrics home visiting policy statement. I'm a member of the Academy and was part of the development of the statement, and I think that that statement, highlights what are is another opportunity to read about the incredible strengths of home visiting and the way to continue to boost impact. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mendelssohn. We did have a question that came in while you were showing the video for the Video Interaction Project, and the question was, are these videos in Spanish and Vietnamese? So the YouTube link that you shared with us, that obviously we watched this in English, is that video also available in Spanish and Vietnamese?
So the program has been fully developed and manualized in English and in Spanish. So there are materials that, so the materials themselves are in English and Spanish. They are not presently in Vietnamese, but we are looking to expand the program to be able to work with many different languages. One of the things that is really neat about the videos, and here I want to make the distinction between the video that I showed and the program. So the video that I showed was a demonstration of what the program looks like, and that demonstration video is only available in English. But the program itself has the capacity to take place in any language, and it does so because this is based on the idea that we are going to video record the parent and child interacting in the language that they are most comfortable in the language of their choice. And so we deliver the program in the language of their choice. So we have delivered the program not only with numerous English-speaking families, but probably even actually more Spanish-speaking families at this moment. So I just want to make that distinction if that helps. Yes.
All right, thank you, Dr. Mendelssohn. And if anyone has additional questions, please use the chat, and we'll have a little bit of time at the end, hopefully, to address some other questions that come up. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Stacy McKeever with Illinois. Stacy?
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy McKeever. I'm the Continuous Quality Improvement Specialist for Illinois McV, and I'm happy to be presenting to you. Today I'm going to provide some preliminary literacy data from our past year of collecting the McV benchmark around literacy. And I'm also going to give an overview of our literacy-related CQI projects that our local implementing agencies engaged in over the past year. And I will start out by just giving you a brief introduction to Illinois McV. So this here is a map of Illinois. It might be a little bit hard to read the legend, so I'm just going to let you know that the purple areas are our service areas from the original, from the beginning of McV, and these areas in beige are areas that we now serve. We had an expansion in the past year. The red diamonds are home visiting sites. The black triangles are doula sites, and the black circles are home visiting and doula sites. So in the past year, we served 1,100 families using 3 evidence-based models and through 35 LIAs. And each of the LIAs engages in its own CQI projects over the course of each year, where they decide exactly what they want to work on and develop a project that's unique to that LIA. And CPRD, that's the organization that I work for, we provide training and technical assistance around CQI in general and help them with their CQI plans. All right, so I thought I would start out just giving you some preliminary data from last year. This was all new to us, this literacy data, so we were excited to see what we were even going to find. So you'll see in the top left-hand box the construct for, I don't know how many are familiar with the McV benchmarks or not. This past year we collected for the first time the percent of children engaged in home visiting services who had a family member read, sing songs, or tell stories to that child daily during a typical week. Okay, and so in the top right box, you'll see our statewide results from last year. So 49% of our children had a family member or family members who practiced daily literacy activities with them during a typical week. And you'll see the range was from 0 to 100%, so it was huge. We had very little missing data, so we felt like this was a pretty accurate description of where we were starting out. Now in the bottom left-hand box, you'll see the results of all of the surveys that we did. And so some families were asked this question multiple times, so we had more surveys on some children than on others. And so you'll see the range of answers. So 5% of families, looks like the slide cut out a little bit, but 5% of families didn't practice literacy activities at all with their kids, whereas 46% of the surveys reported daily literacy activities with some range there throughout. And so this was just kind of interesting to us, like how are these families, how are these children different? That's something we started to explore this year. And then on the bottom right, you'll see for those kids where we had multiple surveys, we looked at, okay, well, how have things changed over time? And, we expected to see that as we asked this question more, as we worked with families on this more, they would report practicing literacy activities more frequently, and for 77% of the families, yes, that happens. But you'll see there's a sizable portion here where that didn't happen. So 13% totally stayed the same over time, whereas 9% even decreased. So this was interesting news to us and something we're going to investigate further. So now a little bit about the CQI plans that our home visiting agencies worked on around literacy. So 6 LAAs decided to work on literacy activities. And so they all did kind of a quick and dirty baseline. Since this was the first time that we were collecting this data, they went out and asked all of their families, you know, how frequently do you practice some kind of literacy activity with your children, typically? And you'll see the baseline ranged quite a bit. So that was something interesting for us. And then they came up with SMART aims around literacy, and they kind of took one of 3 approaches. So you'll see the top 2 here, they decided to try to increase the percent of families who practice literacy daily during a typical week. The third said, okay, well, let's try to increase the average. And I guess that's the fourth. And the last 2 said, hey, let's try to maybe set a baseline. And so let's try to increase the percent of families who practice literacy at least 3 times a week or at least 4 times a week. So it was quite a range, both in terms of what they decided to set as goals and then what their baselines were. So then the home visiting staff did a little bit of analysis and tried to figure out what are the barriers, what are the challenges that our families are facing. And so I think a lot of us go to like, hey, they don't have any books. But it was much more than just resources that families faced. So we had definitely resource barriers, you know, lack of books or, you know, distance from the library. But we also saw time challenges. So some families had really variable schedules in terms of their work or their schooling, and that posed a challenge. Or because of their kids' schools, it was really hard for them to figure out a routine to set around literacy practice. There were barriers related to the child. So, you know, parents were telling us, like, I want to reach out to my kid, but my kid just won't sit still. Or, you know, I have multiple children, different ages, and it's really hard to figure out how to engage them all in a developmentally appropriate way. Then parents had their own unique set of challenges. So, you know, especially I would say around the singing or telling stories, parents were like, hey, I feel silly doing this. Or some families had learning disabilities or were, you know, functionally illiterate and had challenges there. We also found interesting that, you know, some families, parents who had untreated depression really faced challenges around finding interest in being able to sustain literacy practices with their children. And then lastly, there were kind of skills and knowledge issues. So, you know, we frequently found that parents got frustrated with their children's behavior and needed to develop some skills or strategies to deal with that. Or there were kind of some myths or mistaken beliefs that you need to read for a long time for it to quote-unquote count, or that non-reading activities don't count as literacy activities. So with these barriers identified, our LAAs tested out some changes to address the barriers. And these don't kind of defy easy categorization, but you'll see that there were things like increasing the frequency of doing parent-child literacy activities during home visits and groups, working with families to set goals around literacy practice. There was definitely increasing the frequency of giving gift books at home visits and groups. Home visitors introduced new songs in monthly newsletters and then worked with families on those during home visits and groups. They also introduced a lot more non-book or reading activities So audiobooks, lending CD libraries, things like that. And they did some things around data collection, so introducing parent-based data collection tools to assist parents in kind of remembering to document that they were practicing literacy with their child, and also using those data collection tools as a reminder. Some field trips to the libraries, and then following up on referrals for depression and developmental delays. So how did they do? You will see that the vast majority of our LIAs did make improvements here. One agency did have to discontinue the project for other reasons unrelated to the CQI project, but everybody made improvements. 3 of the agencies met their goals. Some were just shy of meeting their goals or just met their goals. One, vastly outdid themselves, and one didn't really come anywhere near meeting their goals. But this was the first time that we were doing this work, so we didn't even necessarily know where to start. So we were very pleased with what these agencies have done. And we also identified some challenges that we are starting to address and think about this year. And so one challenge was the construct changes when you ask it more frequently. So, it's saying, okay, during a typical week, how often do you do these literacy activities? Well, when you ask it more frequently, which you would do in a CQI project, it becomes, okay, how many times did you do this last week, which is kind of different from the construct question. And additionally, when you collect the data more frequently, it's like, okay, is this natural variation that we would expect to see, or is this related to some of these change ideas? So that is something that we will be exploring more. Additionally, some of the tests that we found were successful do require resources to be scaled, so particularly around the CDs and audiobooks. And lastly, we discovered that our home visitors need more training around this. So, first off, just around the construct, we saw incredible variation in where our families were. And I think we expected some of that, but we think some of that may be related to some training needs on behalf of the home visitors so that they ask the question more consistently and not kind of gloss over the singing and telling stories, which we found some of them do. And kind of last, we realized that we do need to work to expand the knowledge base for home visitors and for our state folks as well. And so we were excited to hear Dr. Mendelssohn's presentation and continue working in that area. So that is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions now or in the future.
Thanks, Stacey. It does look like a few questions have come into the chat. So the first one is, how did you collect information on the barriers?
Sure. Home visitors actually went out and asked the families what were some of the challenges that they faced around there. So it wasn't anything incredibly technical.
Okay. The second question is, how long did the LIAs work on their projects?
That was a range from a few months to about a year, but there was definitely a range there.
Great. We also have a question. What 3 evidence-based models are used in the Illinois MCV?
We use Parents as Teachers, Healthy Families America, and Early Head Start.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much, Stacey. Additional questions you can feel free to put over in the chat. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Carrie Churchill from South Dakota. Thanks, Carrie.
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for letting me present to you today. I am with the Bright Start Home Visiting Program with the South Dakota Department of Health, and as Karen said in the introduction, I was one of the home visitors to start the program back in 2000 in South Dakota, and then became a site coordinator for one of the teams, and now I'm the statewide home visiting program manager. So that leads into a caveat I have that I'm actually still in the office where I've been a home visitor and a site coordinator. So at times I slip into saying we, even though I can take no credit for this project. This was done by the Rapid City home visiting team. And actually here in my office is Lisa Washburn. She's the site coordinator who led this project. So if I do slip into we, I say that without taking credit for it myself. So that's some history. We have many years of Bright Start, and we've used the nurse-family partnership model that entire time. This first slide, I would have to start any discussion about South Dakota with a little geography lesson. I don't know if anybody watches Ellen DeGeneres' game show, but once again, the other night, some final question was about which state is Mount Rushmore in, and the lady didn't know and fell through the hole. And so South Dakota is one of those states that seems to end up on geography trivia quite a bit. I know this map is a little blurry, but all of the states that are colored have home visiting services. The two that are red because they were the original sites that we started home visiting. And then we expanded into purple, which is one of the tribal areas, Pine Ridge Reservation. And blue is where we expanded with McVie funding. So those are where we are across the state. Rapid City, where I'm located and where this project was, is in Pennington County, which is on the left side or the west side of the state, the long skinny one. And the county where Mount Rushmore is, if you're ever asked, I have a game show. And then the two blue counties above that are also part of this team, even though the nurse in that area did not participate. Well, she participated, but as part of the United Way initiative, wasn't as involved. So that's the project area that we're focusing on, are those counties on the west side of the state. Again, this is in the context of a CQI plan, so I have it laid out in that way. And the CQI plans that our programs do across the state are chosen locally. So unlike Stacy in Illinois, where each team did focus on that but put their own spin on it, this was a CQI focus that was specific to this area. And again, a question of which came first, the chicken or the egg. I think that the team decided to focus on this partially because this benchmark measure 11 was new last year, focusing on early language and literacy, but also because we were approached, again, the Rapid City team was approached by the United Way, which last year started a grade level reading initiative. And I have been reading in the chat that there are some other states that do have sites or communities that are focused on grade level reading. This Black Hills area United Way campaign is the only one in South Dakota, and it was just getting started. The person who was hired to lead this initiative was new to the United Way and happened to be watching a PBS NewsHour show one night where they did focus on nurse-family partnership and the way that that program has shown positive outcomes in getting families ready for school. So she was very excited to learn that this was a program that was already available in Rapid City and made it her mission to work with what we call Bright Start in Rapid City to make this a success. So again, chicken or the egg, which came first? It all kind of happened together that we had this meeting, excuse me, with the United Way person to partner with them on early literacy. So again, since it was a new benchmark, Rapid City chose the arbitrary benchmark of reading a minimum of 3 times a week, reading, singing, or telling stories, not knowing really where the benchmark was to start. That was the plan. They chose strategies, one of which was the partnership with the United Way grade level reading. The nurses will provide baby's first book bag, building strong readers, and I'll show a picture of that bag soon. But the nurses would be bringing this out, and it would be supplied by the United Way of the Black Hills. And not just handing out a bag to families, but the biggest part was the education around that. Nurses will reinforce the importance of daily reading to parents, and we'd already been doing that in our services using the PIPE curriculum, Baby's First Teacher and Reading to Baby especially. And then in addition to those two things, our United Way also participates in the Imagination Library program and has for many years. And probably since the beginning of home visiting, we've been signing families up for Imagination Library, which is where a free book is mailed directly to a child from birth until their 5th birthday. and that's been wonderful. So nurses had been helping families to sign up to get those books in the mail, but this project would allow the nurses to bring out books in a targeted intervention as well. And then the nurses would continue to reinforce daily reading, singing, and telling stories during developmental screening periods, which again is a benchmark area. So a couple of you asked, but there's a picture of the contents of the bag. The bag included 3 books, and a lot of thought was put into the variety, hardback, interactive, softback that has more of a story to it. And then you can see a couple of laminated sheets there also that just have pictures of shapes, colors, those kind of things, so that it's not all about reading a book beginning to end. A lot of the teaching focused around what constitutes talking with your child, singing songs, reminding them that itsy bitsy spider is something that they're doing to build language literacy in their clients. So even using those sheets and pointing to what's a star and what's orange and what's purple, there are tools for that in there as well. In addition, information about how to sign up for the Imagination Library. So that's the book bag. The study the CQI work went from the end of 2016 until early September 2017, so not quite a year. During that time frame, a total of 103 bags were distributed. The outcome was that 98% of the NFP clients, or first-time clients, met that CQI goal of reading, singing, or telling stories at least 3 times per week. In this service area here, we also have a non-evidence-based curriculum we do, non-NFP clients, and we don't have the wonderful data collection system that NFP does to get the outcomes, but we did focus on this same measure with them, and that group, 93% of those clients were meeting that goal of reading, singing, and telling stories 3 days a week. And I can say also that this project did not end with the end of the CQI project. It's continuing on. In the acting part, these are some comments from the coordinator who pulled everything together, that on the team of 8 nurses, they were very thankful for this partnership for United Way, because talking about literacy has always been part of the work that we've done in home visits, but having the tools to show parents how to do it really makes a difference. Like Stacy said, in budgeting, you want to have something that makes it meaningful for parents and a great way to hook them. There are also times where what came out of that bag really made a difference to parents. One of the nurses shared she wasn't too excited about the idea of reading, or she didn't think that her child was old enough to care about reading until she saw the book, Love You Forever, and she got so excited because that was her husband's favorite book as a child. So just that emotional reaction that books can stimulate for families. So all those parts kind of pulled together into this not being just a numbers game about increasing the number of days families are reading, but really getting them to enjoy it and to learn the importance of routines. So there are lots of benefits to it. And again, like I said, our home visiting program is going to remain a partner with United Way to continue distributing the book bags. Again, just through serendipity, today was the first year celebration of the United Way grade level reading initiative, and they're changing the name to Black Hills Reads, which shows the bigger community is now going to be involved. Lisa, the site coordinator, spoke about this at that community meeting today. It was a celebration, really, and we had someone from the National Grade Level Reading Program come out, and the mayor and the superintendent of schools all came and shared that the community is focused around this. So the partnership has been a real success as well to make home visiting looped into the larger community. So again, this will continue on. And just one last slide. If any of you have any questions, there's my contact information. So I'll wrap that up.
Carrie, thank you so much. We do have several questions coming in for you. The first one is, what variables from the NFP data system did you use to track this in CQI?
The Nurse Family Partnership updated their data collection forms. The home visit encounter is where it's asked how many days. Lisa can.
It's asked on the infant.
Infant health care, infant health form. So at 6, 12, 18, and 24 months, how many days in a typical week do you read, sing, or tell stories to your child? And the answers are from 0 to 7.
Great. It's a similar question about the data collection, and I think it might have been covered, but did you create a spreadsheet for the data collection, a charter for CQI learning community?
We used they used the NFP reports and data quality reports. We also have an evaluator that we contract with, and so she did some of the final evaluation, but most of the NFP data was readily available. And they did create a CQI charter. That's where I pretty much pulled my PowerPoint from, was from the charter information.
Okay. And again, kind of related, is there a coin for this? Collaborative.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Not that we're involved in.
Okay. And we do have one final question. This is from Karen Finello, and this is for both Illinois and South Dakota. She writes, both Illinois and South Dakota's Part C programs selected knowledge and skills with heavy emphasis on early language and literacy as a goal for improvement. How much are the McBee programs in those two states working closely with Part C? So this is really for both Stacy and Carrie.
This is Carrie. I'm still on, so I'll just hop in first. With Part C, we're really at a state level working with them. They're on our statewide advisory board and aware of the work that's being done. And then in the local communities, too, all local communities have memorandums of understanding, and definitely that's where our home visitors make referrals if in doing the developmental screenings, there's concerns found. But as far as this particular project goes and literacy for all families, I don't think that there was a strong connection on that. It's more in the way of when concerns are noted. We definitely have a system for making referrals as needed.
Okay, and Stacy?
Yeah, same in Illinois. For these projects, no collaboration.
I just want to point out, you have the presenters' email addresses. You can definitely contact with them. We have 3 more minutes in the presentation, and it's really important for us to stay together. I want to let you know our evaluations that we receive from you are so important. At the end of this webinar, you will have an evaluation pop up. We already have gotten feedback from you all that to shorten our webinars from 90 to 60 minutes whenever possible, which is what we've done today, and also feedback that we've gotten from evaluations that we've used to directly make changes is that would we please make sure we're linking these closer to the performance measures and benchmarks. So we take your feedback very serious and try to use it to improve the quality of the resources we offer. So please do take the time at the end to complete the evaluation. With that, we're going to hop back to our 2 Jumpstart the Brain questions. So this was covered by Dr. Mendelssohn in his presentation. I'll just give you a minute to go ahead and answer this question. All right, and we are at this point going to close the poll. And we can now share that the answer for this was 25 to 50%, and that most of you during the course of this presentation had listed that from Dr. Mendelssohn's session. The second question that we had on our Jumpstart the Brain was about the parent-related factors. So I will let you go ahead and choose all that apply. All right, it looks like most of you have had a chance to weigh in, so we're going to close the polling and we'll show the results again. And the parent-related factors were the ones that were feeling silly, learning disabilities, untreated depression. The one that was in here to try to trick you was sitting still, and that was a child-related factor. So if we could head back to the slide deck at this point. I just want to close out by letting you know a couple of resources you have that can help you continue the discussion. We have our newsletter coming out this week. We're so excited on early language and literacy. There's a lot in this newsletter that will help, again, McVie awardees, what they're doing to support progress toward the school readiness benchmark and language and literacy performance measure. So lots of good stuff. We have an article on how the evidence-based home visiting models are supporting early language and literacy. And we also have a piece on the Bridging the Word Gap Challenge with all of the finalists and also the winner and some of the innovative technology-based interventions that they created. So please look at that, as well as upcoming events and resources, which are always listed in our newsletter. We have a conversation going presently on the McVie Awardee portal, or the MAP, about early language and literacy. So we welcome you to go and join in that discussion, maybe share some of the resources that you talked about during this, and also to share your own progress, CQI plans, success stories, ways that you've engaged families or had your programs engage families in their child's learning. Also an opportunity for you to pose a question or a challenge that you're facing and to get some additional feedback and technical support. So with that, I want to thank you for spending the hour with us today, and please take the time to complete the evaluation. Thank you to all of our presenters, and again to everyone at HV ImpACT and HRSA for supporting us in this